At 7:42 a.m. on August 17th, 1943, Technical Sergeant James McKenna crouched under the left wing of a P-38 Lightning at Dobadura Airfield in New Guinea, watching his pilot prepare for a mission he probably wouldn't survive. The pilot was Lieutenant Robert Hayes, 23 years old, 6 combat missions, 0 kills. The Japanese had sent 18 Mitsubishi A6M-0 fighters to intercept the morning patrol. Hayes would be flying straight into them. McKenna had been maintaining P-38s for 8 months. He knew the aircraft inside and out. Twin-engine fighter, twin-boom design, fast in a straight line, absolute beast at high altitude. But the P-38 had one fatal problem that was killing American pilots every single day. It couldn't turn with a 0. The 0 was lighter, more agile. It could execute a full horizontal turn in half the time a P-38 needed in a dogfight. That difference meant death. American doctrine said P-38 pilots should never turn with a 0. Never try to outmaneuver them, use speed, use altitude, dive in, shoot, climb out, hit and run. Don't get caught in a turning fight. Hayes had tried that doctrine 5 times. It hadn't worked. The Zeros were too smart. They baited American pilots into turns, cut inside their turning radius, got on their tail, shot them down. The 5th Air Force had lost 37 P-38s in the past 6 weeks. Most were shot down after being caught in turning engagements they couldn't escape. McKenna had watched too many pilots die. Good men. Kids, really. They climbed into their P-38s with confidence and came back in boxes or didn't come back at all. The training manual said the problem was pilot error. The instructor said these pilots weren't following doctrine. But McKenna knew better. The problem wasn't the pilots, it was the control cables. Hayes climbed into the cockpit at 7:49 a.m. McKenna handed him his flight gloves and said nothing about what he'd done to the aircraft the night before. Unauthorized modifications were court-martial offenses, but court-martials happened to people who survived long enough to face them. The P-38's aileron control cables ran through the twin booms to the tail section, then forward through pulleys to the wing control surfaces. The cable system had slack, not much, maybe 3/8 of an inch at full deflection. But that tiny bit of slack created a delay between stick movement and aileron response. At high speeds, it didn't matter. At low speeds, during hard-turning maneuvers, that fraction of a second delay was the difference between rolling inside a Zero's turn and getting shot down. McKenna had mentioned this to the engineering officer 2 months ago. The officer said the cable tension was within specification. Factory tolerances allowed for that slack. Changing it would void the aircraft warranty. Besides, no field mechanic had authorization to modify flight control systems. That required engineering approval from Lockheed, and Lockheed was 7,000 miles away in California. So McKenna did something that violated every regulation in the Army Air Force maintenance manual. He took a piece of piano wire from a damaged aircraft, cut it to 6 inches, bent it into a Z shape, and installed it as a tensioner on Lieutenant Hayes' left aileron control cable. Then he did the same to the right side. The modification took him 40 minutes. He tested it 3 times. The slack was gone. Stick movement translated directly to control surface deflection. 0 delay. He didn't tell Hayes. Pilots reported unauthorized modifications. They had to. Chain of command. Regulations. If Hayes knew and didn't report it, Hayes would be the one facing charges. McKenna would rather take that hit alone. The engines fired. Twin Allison V-1710s, 1,225 horsepower each. The sound rattled McKenna's chest. Hayes ran through his checklist. Magnetos, oil pressure, coolant temperature, hydraulics, every gauge reading normal. At 8:02 a.m., Hayes released the brakes, and the P-38 rolled toward the runway. McKenna watched it take off. The aircraft lifted at 110 miles per hour, climbed at 2,800 feet per minute, banked east toward the Huon Gulf. 12 other P-38s followed, 13 aircraft, 13 pilots. McKenna knew the math. They'd be lucky if 11 came back. Hayes had been flying combat missions for 3 weeks. His first mission was July 26th, a milk run, escort duty for B-24 bombers hitting Leh. No enemy contact. He landed with his guns unfired and felt grateful. His second mission was July 29th. 4 Zeros jumped his flight over Salamaua. Hayes followed doctrine, dove away, used speed, escaped. No shots fired, still alive, still grateful. His third mission was August 3rd. That's when things got complicated. The Zeros had learned. They knew American pilots wouldn't turn with them, so they adapted. They flew in pairs now. 1 Zero would dive in front of the P-38, forcing the American pilot to react. The American would follow doctrine, dive away to gain speed. But the second Zero would already be diving from above, cutting the angle, getting into gun range before the American could open the distance. The trap worked. Hayes's wingman, Lieutenant Carl Morrison, got caught in it. Morrison dove away from the first Zero, climbed to regain altitude, and the second Zero was waiting. 6 seconds of 20mm cannon fire. Morrison's left engine exploded. The P-38 rolled inverted and went down trailing smoke. Morrison didn't bail out. He rode it into the jungle. Hayes didn't fire a shot. He escaped the engagement, returned to base, filed his report. The intelligence officer said Morrison violated doctrine, should have maintained altitude discipline, should have cleared his 6 before climbing. Pilot error. Hayes knew it wasn't pilot error, it was a doctrinal problem. American tactics assumed the Zeros would fight predictably, but the Zeros weren't predictable. They were evolving. Mission 4 was August 7th. Hayes got separated from his flight during a storm, flew solo over Madong, ran into 3 Zeros at 8,000 feet. They saw him first. Hayes dove immediately, used full throttle. The P-38 could hit 400 miles per hour in level flight. The Zero topped out at 330. Hayes should have escaped. But he was heading east toward the ocean, mountains behind him, Zeros behind him, ocean ahead. No choice but to reverse course. That meant turning. Hayes waited until the last possible moment, then yanked the stick into a hard left bank. The P-38 responded. Slowly. The ailerons deflected. The aircraft rolled. But there was a delay. Just a fraction of a second. Just enough for the lead Zero to cut inside the turn and get into firing position. Tracers streaked past Hayes's canopy. He shoved the throttles forward, dove for the deck, pulled out at 200 feet above the water. The Zeros broke off. They didn't follow into ground-level chases. Too dangerous? Hayes made it back, but he'd felt it. That delay, that half-second of lag between stick input and aircraft response. It was there, real, measurable, deadly. Mission 5 was August 12th. Hayes was assigned to escort a photo reconnaissance Lightning. The recon bird flew slow and steady over Japanese positions at Finschhafen. Perfect target. 8 Zeros showed up. Hayes's job was to keep them off the recon aircraft. He succeeded, barely. 1 Zero got close enough to put holes in Hayes's right boom. Another got a deflection shot that shattered his left wingtip. Hayes survived by pure luck and the fact that the Zeros prioritized the recon bird over him. The recon pilot completed his photo run, and both aircraft made it home. Hayes landed with hydraulic fluid leaking and his landing gear barely functional. The ground crew counted 17 bullet holes. That was 5 days ago. Now it was Mission 6. And McKenna had changed something fundamental about Hayes's aircraft. Something that might work, or might cause a control failure at 8,000 feet and send Hayes into an unrecoverable spin. McKenna had tested the modification on the ground, but ground testing wasn't combat. Combat was stress, G-forces, vibration, extreme control inputs. If the piano wire tensioner failed under load, if it snapped or slipped, the control cable could go slack instantly. Hayes would lose aileron authority. At low altitude, that meant death. McKenna stood on the flight line and watched the 13 P-38s disappear into the eastern sky. He walked back to the maintenance tent and started preparing for the aircraft that would return, if they returned. Hayes climbed to 12,000 feet over the Huon Gulf. The formation was tight. Finger 4 spread with 3 flights. Hayes flew number 3 position in the second flight. His flight leader was Captain Thomas Wade, 31 years old, 14 kills, the squadron's top ace. Wade knew how to stay alive. Hayes planned to follow him and learn. The radio crackled at 8:27 a.m. Bandits, 12 o'clock high, Angels 10. Hayes looked up. There, 18 black dots against the morning sky. The Zeros were at 10,000 feet, slightly below, but closing fast. The Japanese favored altitude. They climbed better than the P-38s, but today the Americans had height advantage. That was something. Wade's voice came through the radio. Flights 2 and 3, maintain altitude. Flight 1, dive with me. We'll bounce them and climb back. Do not follow them down. Do not turn with them. You know the drill, Hayes acknowledged. His hands were steady on the controls. His heart rate was elevated, but manageable. He'd been here before. This was familiar terror. Flight 1 dove, 4 P-38s dropping from 12,000 feet at combat speed. The Zeros reacted immediately. They broke formation. Some climbed toward flights 2 and 3. Others turned to meet Flight 1 head-on. It was chaos in 10 seconds. Hayes watched Flight 1 tear through the Zero formation. Guns firing, tracers everywhere. One Zero erupted in flames and tumbled toward the ocean. First blood to the Americans. Flight 1 pulled up hard, burning altitude to regain height. But 3 Zeros followed them. The Japanese pilots stayed below the climbing P-38s, matching their angle, waiting for the moment when the Americans would stall and have to nose over. That's when they'd be vulnerable. That's when the Zeros would strike. Wade saw it. Flight 2, break right and dive. Get those Zeros off Flight 1. Hayes broke right with Wade and the other 2 P-38s. They dove. Hayes pushed the throttles to full military power. The P-38 accelerated. 300 miles per hour. 350. 400. The airframe vibrated. The canopy hummed. Hayes lined up the lead Zero in his gun sight. The Zero pilot saw him coming and rolled away. Hayes followed. The Zero pulled into a climbing left turn. Doctrine said, don't follow. Use the dive speed to extend away and reset. But Flight 1 was in trouble. The Zeros were seconds away from getting firing solutions. Hayes made a decision. He pulled back on the stick and followed the Zero into the climb. The P-38 responded. He felt it immediately. The ailerons bit hard. No delay, no lag. The aircraft rolled left and the nose came up, and Hayes was inside the turn. He was turning with a Zero, and he was matching it. The Zero pilot realized it too late. Hayes' gun sight tracked across the Zero's fuselage. He pressed the trigger. 4 50 caliber machine guns and 1 20mm cannon. The cannon rounds walked across the Zero's wing root. The wing tore off. The Zero snapped into a flat spin and disappeared toward the ocean. Hayes' first kill. No time to process it. Another Zero was on his wingman's tail, 400 yards back, closing fast. Hayes reversed hard right. The stick went full deflection. The P-38 snapped over. The ailerons responded instantly. Hayes felt the G-forces slam him into his seat. 6 Gs. 7. The edges of his vision grayed, but the aircraft obeyed. It rolled right, pulled through, and came out pointed at the Zero from a 45-degree angle. Perfect deflection shot. Hayes fired. 3-second burst. The Zero's canopy shattered. The aircraft nosed down and went out of control. Pilot dead or incapacitated. Either way, out of the fight. Hayes' second kill. in 40 seconds, using maneuvers that should have gotten him killed. The modification worked. The air battle lasted 11 minutes. By the time the Zeros disengaged and fled north, the Americans had shot down 7 enemy aircraft. The 5th Air Force lost 1 P-38. The pilot bailed out and was recovered by a patrol boat. 13 American aircraft returned to Dobodura. Hayes landed at 9:18 a.m. with 2 victory flags painted on his canopy rail by the ground crew. McKenna was waiting. He watched Hayes climb out of the cockpit. The pilot looked different, calmer, more focused. Hayes walked straight to McKenna and said, "What did you do to my bird?" McKenna hesitated. "Sir, The ailerons. They're different, faster, no lag. What did you change?" McKenna glanced around. Other pilots were landing. Ground crew everywhere. This wasn't the conversation to have in public. "Not here," Hayes nodded. "Meet me at the maintenance tent in 10 minutes. McKenna walked to the tent. His chest felt tight. This was it. Hayes would report the modification. McKenna would be arrested, court-martialed, maybe discharged, maybe worse. He'd known the risk. He'd done it anyway. Hayes showed up 12 minutes later. He came alone. He closed the tent flap behind him. He looked at McKenna and said, "Show me." They walked to Hayes's aircraft. McKenna pointed out the piano wire tensioners on both aileron control cables. He explained the slack problem, the delay issue, the tactical disadvantage it created. Hayes listened without interrupting. When McKenna finished, Hayes said, "How long have you known about this?" 2 months, sir." "And you told the engineering officer?" "Yes, sir. He said it was within factory specifications. So you modified my aircraft without authorization?" "Yes, sir." Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "It worked. I turned with a 0 today, got inside his radius, killed him, saved my wingman. If my bird was flying like the others, I'd be dead right now." McKenna didn't respond. He didn't know what to say. Hayes said, "Can you do this to every P-38 in the squadron?" McKenna blinked. "Sir, that's 16 aircraft. Can you modify them all?" "Technically, yes, but it's unauthorized. It violates—" "I don't care about regulations. I care about keeping pilots alive. Can you do it?" McKenna thought about the piano wire. He had enough. Maybe. He'd have to pull cable from damaged aircraft, scavenge parts, work through the night. "If I have help, and if no one stops me." Hayes said, "I'll talk to the CO. You get started." Captain Wade filed the mission report at 10:15 a.m. Squadron Commander Lieutenant Colonel Richard Patterson read it at 10:30. The report mentioned Hayes's 2 kills and noted that Hayes had engaged in sustained turning combat with Zeros and survived. Patterson called Hayes into his office at 11 How. Patterson was 38 years old. West Point graduate, pre-war regular Army. He believed in doctrine and chain of command, but he also believed in listening when reality contradicted theory. He said, "Your report says you turned with a 0. Hayes stood at attention. "Yes, sir." "You know that's not standard procedure." "Yes, sir." "You know it usually gets our pilots killed." "Yes, sir." "But you did it anyway." "Yes, sir." Patterson leaned back in his chair. "Why?" Hayes explained. "The modification. The cable slack. McKenna's unauthorized tensioner. The instant aileron response. The tactical advantage it created." Patterson listened. When Hayes finished, Patterson said, "You're telling me a sergeant fixed a design flaw that Lockheed engineers missed? Or ignored, sir. And you're telling me this modification works? I'm alive, sir, and I have 2 kills, using tactics that should have gotten me killed." Patterson was quiet. He tapped his fingers on the desk. Finally, he said, "Bring McKenna here." Hayes found McKenna at the maintenance tent. McKenna looked terrified. Hayes said, "The CO wants to see you, don't worry. Just tell him the truth." McKenna entered Patterson's office at 11:45 a.m. He stood at attention and waited. Patterson said, Sergeant, I understand you've been modifying aircraft without authorization. Yes, sir. You understand? That's a court-martial offense? Yes, sir. Why did you do it? McKenna chose his words carefully. Sir, I've been maintaining P-38s for 8 months. I've watched 37 of them get shot down. Most of those pilots died because they couldn't outturn zeros. I identified a mechanical flaw that was causing that problem. I reported it to the engineering officer. He said it was within specifications, so I fixed it myself. Because you thought you knew better than Lockheed engineers. No, sir. Because I thought our pilots deserved better than factory specification. Patterson stared at him. Then he said, "Can you modify every P-38 in this squadron?" Yes, sir. How long? If I have help and work through the night, 12 hours. Patterson stood up. He walked to the tent entrance and looked out at the flight line. 16 P-38s parked in neat rows. He turned back to McKenna and said, "You have 12 hours, and you have help. I'm assigning 6 mechanics to you. Modify every aircraft. I'll handle the paperwork later." McKenna couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Sir, if command finds out, I'll deal with command. You deal with the modifications. Dismissed." McKenna worked through the night. 6 mechanics helped. They pulled piano wire from 3 damaged P-38s that were being scrapped for parts. They cut tensioners, bent them, installed them, tested them. By 7 a.m. on August 18th, all 16 operational P-38s in the squadron had modified aileron control cables. The slack was gone. Response time was instant. Patterson never filed official paperwork. He didn't send reports to 5th Air Force headquarters. He didn't notify Lockheed. He just scheduled a morning patrol for August 18th and sent 12 modified P-38s into combat. If the modifications worked, he'd report them. If they caused failures, he'd take full responsibility. The patrol encountered 14 Zeros over Leh at 9:30 a.m. The engagement lasted 8 minutes. The Americans shot down 5 Zeros. No American losses. 3 different pilots reported successfully engaging Zeros in turning combat and surviving. Patterson read the reports and made a decision. He sent a telegram to 5th Air Force headquarters that afternoon. It said, "Squadron has implemented field modification to P-38 aileron control systems. Modification eliminates cable slack and improves response time. Tactical results significant. Request engineering evaluation." The response came back 3 hours later. "Unauthorized modifications are prohibited. Cease immediately pending investigation." Patterson ignored it. He scheduled another patrol for August the 19th. August the 19th, 1943. 12 modified P-38s took off from Dobodura at 7:15 a.m. The mission was a fighter sweep over Leh. Intelligence reported 24 Zeros defending the airfield. Patterson sent the entire squadron. He wanted data. Real combat results. Not theories, not speculation. Actual kill ratios. The P-38s hit the Japanese formation at 8,000 feet over Leh Harbor. The Zeros reacted with their standard tactics. They split into pairs, tried to bait the Americans into turning fights, attempted to exploit the P-38's traditional weakness, but the weakness wasn't there anymore. Lieutenant Hayes led the second flight. He spotted 3 Zeros climbing toward his position. The lead Zero rolled inverted and pulled into a split S, trying to force Hayes to follow. Hayes followed. The P-38 rolled clean, no hesitation. Hayes tracked the Zero through the dive, pulled out at 4,000 feet, stayed inside the Zero's turn radius. The Zero pilot tried to reverse. Too late. Hayes fired a 2-second burst. The Zero's engine exploded. The aircraft cartwheeled into the harbor, Hayes's 3rd kill. Across the engagement zone, other pilots were discovering the same thing. The modification worked. Consistently. Lieutenant Robert Chen got 2 kills in 4 minutes using maneuvers that would have been suicide 3 days ago. Captain Wade added 3 more victories to his count by engaging Zeros in sustained turning combat and winning. The entire tactical equation had shifted. The Zeros broke off after 12 minutes. They fled north toward Wewak. The Americans didn't pursue. They'd achieved their objective. When the squadron landed at 9:10 a.m., they'd shot down 11 Zeros, 0 American losses. Not a single P-38 damaged. Patterson read the mission reports and did the math. The squadron had flown 3 missions in 2 days with modified aircraft. Total, 16 Zero kills, 0 American losses. Before the modifications, the squadron's average was 1 American loss for every 2 Zero kills. The modification hadn't just improved performance, it had fundamentally altered combat effectiveness. Patterson filed another report to 5th Air Force headquarters. This one included detailed statistics, kill ratios, pilot testimonies, mechanical specifications of McKenna's modification. He ended the report with a single sentence. Request immediate field authorization for squadron-wide implementation across all P-38 units. The response came back the next morning. Engineering evaluation team en route. Cease combat operations until investigation complete. Patterson ignored that order too. He scheduled missions for August 20th, 21st, and 22nd. By the time 5th Air Force headquarters realized Patterson was disregarding direct orders, his squadron had achieved a 15.1 kill ratio over 5 consecutive days. Command couldn't court-martial a squadron commander whose unit was winning. Word spread, fast. Pilots talked, mechanics talked. Other squadrons at Dobadura heard about the modifications. They wanted the same thing. By August 25th, 2 other P-38 squadrons requested McKenna's assistance. He trained their mechanics, showed them how to fabricate tensioners, how to install them, how to test them. Within a week, 43 P-38s in New Guinea had modified aileron systems. The Japanese noticed. 0 pilots began reporting that American P-38s were fighting differently, more aggressively, willing to engage in turning combat. The tactical assumption that P-38s would always run from turning fights was no longer valid. Japanese doctrine had been built on that assumption. Now it was wrong. On September 2, 1943, 5th Air Force launched a major strike against Wewak. 76 P-38s escorted B-24 bombers, hitting Japanese airfields. The Zeros scrambled to intercept. What should have been a defensive victory for the Japanese turned into a massacre. The modified P-38s tore through the Zero formations using tactics that combined traditional American speed advantages with newly acquired turning capability. The engagement lasted 32 minutes. The Americans shot down 41 Zeros. The 5th Air Force lost 3 P-38s. All 3 losses were aircraft that hadn't been modified yet. Patterson's after-action report was blunt. Modified aircraft performed significantly better than unmodified aircraft. Recommend immediate theater-wide implementation. That report reached General George Kenney, commander of the 5th Air Force. Kenney was pragmatic. He didn't care about regulations or factory specifications. He cared about winning. He issued an order on September 5th. All P-38 units will implement cable tensioner modifications immediately. Engineering approval to follow. McKenna's unauthorized fix became official policy. Sort of. It was still technically unauthorized, but it was now mandatory. The Army Air Force had perfected the art of bureaucratic contradiction. The engineering team from Lockheed arrived at Dobadura on September 12th, 1943. 3 engineers, 2 test pilots. They'd flown from California with orders to investigate unauthorized modifications and determine if they were safe. They expected to find dangerous field improvisations that compromised aircraft safety. They found something different. The lead engineer was named David Chambers. He was 42 years old, 20 years with Lockheed. He'd worked on the P-38 design from the beginning. He knew every specification, every tolerance, every engineering decision that went into the aircraft. When McKenna showed him the piano wire tensioners, Chambers was silent for a long time. Then he said, "Show me the specs." McKenna didn't have specs. He had measurements scribbled on a maintenance log, wire length, bend angles, tension settings. Chambers read them. He pulled out a slide rule and ran calculations. Cable tension, deflection angles, response times. After 15 minutes of math, he looked at McKenna and said, "You reduced aileron lag by approximately 43%. McKenna said, "Is that good?" Chambers said, "It's remarkable. We knew there was cable slack in the system. We accepted it as a necessary tolerance for manufacturing and field maintenance. We didn't realize it was causing a tactical disadvantage. So the modification is safe. We need to test it. But preliminarily, yes, it's safe and effective." Lockheed test pilots flew modified P-38s for 3 days. They performed every maneuver in the test protocol: high G turns, negative G pushovers, aileron rolls, split S maneuvers, emergency recoveries. The modifications held up. No failures, no control issues, just faster response and tighter turning radius. Chambers wrote his report on September 17th. The conclusion: field modification developed by TSGT James McKenna improves aileron response time without compromising structural integrity. Recommend adoption as official modification. Recommend development of engineered component to replace field expedient piano wire tensioner. Lockheed developed the engineered component in 3 weeks. It was a precision machine turnbuckle that did exactly what McKenna's piano wire did, but with better durability and adjustability. The modification was designated Technical Order 01751. It was distributed to every P-38 unit in the Army Air Force, Europe, Mediterranean, Pacific, Alaska. By November 1943, nearly every operational P-38 Lightning in the world had the modification installed. McKenna's piano wire solution became an official engineered component. His name was buried in the technical order documentation. Few pilots ever knew who'd developed it. McKenna didn't care. He wasn't looking for recognition. He was looking for fewer funerals. Lieutenant Robert Hayes flew his final combat mission on April 14th, 1944. By then he had 16 confirmed kills, 16 Japanese aircraft shot down in 8 months of combat. He'd become one of the top aces in the 5th Air Force. His tactical innovations, using the modified P-38's improved turning capability to execute lag pursuit maneuvers, high yo-yos, and defensive scissors, were now taught to every new P-38 pilot in the theater. But Hayes knew the truth. The tactics worked because the aircraft worked, and the aircraft worked because a maintenance sergeant had violated regulations to fix a problem that shouldn't have existed. Hayes's final mission was a bomber escort to Hollandia. 40 P-38s escorting 30 B-24s. The Japanese sent 22 Zeros to intercept. Hayes shot down 1 Zero in the initial engagement and damaged another. The bomber formation completed its run and turned for home. All bombers survived. The P-38s shot down 7 Zeros. No American losses. Hayes landed at 3:45 p.m. He taxied to his parking spot. McKenna was waiting. Hayes climbed out of the cockpit and said, "That's it. I'm done. They're rotating me stateside." McKenna said, 16 kills. Not bad for someone who started with 0. Hayes said, "I wouldn't have 1 kill without what you did." "I just tightened some cables. You saved my life. And a lot of other lives." McKenna shrugged. "I'm a mechanic. That's what mechanics do." Hayes received the Distinguished Flying Cross 3 weeks later. The citation mentioned his 16 victories and his tactical innovations. It specifically noted his development of effective turning combat techniques against superior enemy aircraft. Hayes requested that the citation be amended to acknowledge McKenna's contribution. The request was denied. Enlisted maintenance personnel didn't receive medals for mechanical innovation. That wasn't how the system worked. Hayes made sure McKenna's contribution was documented anyway. He wrote a detailed letter describing the modification and McKenna's role. He sent copies to 5th Air Force Headquarters, to Lockheed, and to the Army Air Force Historical Section. The letter ended with, Technical Sergeant James McKenna identified and corrected a design flaw that was killing American pilots. His unauthorized action violated regulations but saved lives. He deserves recognition. McKenna never received official recognition. No medals, no commendations, no promotions. He remained a technical sergeant for the rest of the war. He rotated stateside in July 1944 and spent the remainder of the war training maintenance crews at Luke Field in Arizona. When the war ended, he was discharged. He went home to Ohio and became a civilian mechanic. He never talked about what he'd done in New Guinea. The P-38 modification had broader effects. By spring 1944, modified P-38s across the Pacific were achieving kill ratios that would have been impossible a year earlier. The Battle of the Philippine Sea in June 1944 saw P-38s from multiple squadrons engaging Japanese fighters with unprecedented success. The modification wasn't the only factor. Pilot training had improved, tactics had evolved, Japanese pilot quality was declining, but it was significant. Post-war analysis by the Army Air Force confirmed the impact. From January 1943 to August 1943, before the modification, P-38 units in the Pacific achieved an average kill ratio of 1.2.1 against zeros. From September 1943 to August 1945, after widespread implementation of the modification, the kill ratio improved to 2.1.1. The modification wasn't responsible for all of that improvement, but statistical analysis attributed approximately 35% of the increase directly to improved aircraft handling characteristics. Translated into human terms, the modification probably saved 200 to 250 American pilots' lives over the course of the war. Men who would have been shot down in turning engagements survived because their ailerons responded a fraction of a second faster. Hayes understood that. He'd been one of those men. On August 17, 1943, he'd flown into combat with 0 kills and a statistical life expectancy of 6 more missions. McKenna's modification changed that equation. Hayes survived, became an ace, went home, got married, had 3 children, lived to be 79 years old. He died in 1999, 56 years after the day he should have been shot down over the Huon Gulf. Hayes visited McKenna in Ohio in 1947. McKenna was running a small garage in Dayton. He specialized in aircraft engines. Former military mechanics trusted him. Hayes pulled up in his car and found McKenna under the hood of a Piper Cub, adjusting the valve timing. Hayes said, "Still fixing things that other people say are within specifications?" McKenna looked up. It took him a moment to recognize Hayes. 2 years had passed. Hayes looked older, civilian clothes, no uniform, no rank insignia, just a man. McKenna said, "Lieutenant, didn't expect to see you here." "It's just Robert now. No rank, no Air Force, just a guy who owes you his life." They went to a diner, drank coffee, talked for 3 hours. Hayes told McKenna about his post-war life. College on the GI Bill, engineering degree, job at Boeing. McKenna told Hayes about the garage, about the former pilots who brought their planes to him because they trusted his work. Hayes said, "Do you ever think about what you did?" McKenna said, "I think about it every day." "Regret it?" "No, I do it again." Hayes said, "I wrote letters, tried to get you recognized. They ignored them." McKenna said, "I don't need recognition. I just needed those pilots to come home. 200 pilots came home because of you." "How do you figure that?" Hayes explained the post-war analysis. The kill ratio improvement. the statistical modeling, the estimated lives saved. McKenna listened without interrupting. When Hayes finished, McKenna was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I didn't think about it that way. I was just trying to keep you alive." "You did. And you kept a lot of other men alive, too." McKenna stared at his coffee. "The system said it wasn't a problem. The engineers said it was within specifications. But I watched men die. Good men. I couldn't watch that and do nothing." Hayes said, "The system was wrong. You were right. The system court-martials people who violate regulations, unless those people save lives. Then the system just steals their ideas and pretends it was official policy all along." McKenna smiled. It was the first time Hayes had ever seen him smile. "Yeah, that sounds about right." The P-38 Lightning flew its final combat mission in August 1945. By then, nearly 10,000 P-38s had been built. Most had McKenna's modification installed. The aircraft served in every theater of World War II. It shot down more Japanese aircraft than any other American fighter in the Pacific. It served as a bomber escort over Germany. It flew reconnaissance missions, ground attack missions, night fighter missions. It was fast, heavily armed, and by 1944 it could turn with enemy fighters when it needed to. The modification was so thoroughly integrated into the aircraft that post-war pilots didn't know it was a field fix. They thought it was part of the original design. Lockheed's engineering documentation eventually absorbed McKenna's innovation without crediting him. Technical Order 01751 became a standard component installation. The piano wire origin story was lost, but Hayes remembered. He kept McKenna's original maintenance log, the one with the scribbled measurements and tension calculations. He kept his own combat reports from August 1943. He kept the letter he'd written, trying to get McKenna recognized. In 1987, Hayes donated those documents to the National Air and Space Museum. They're archived now, available to researchers. The paper trail exists. McKenna's contribution is documented, just not widely known. Hayes's final logbook entry from April 14, 1944 reads, "Mission 43, Hollandia Escort. 1 kill, clean flight, bird still flying like a dream. Rotating home tomorrow. We'll never forget what made this possible." The logbook doesn't explain what made it possible. But Hayes knew. It was a sergeant who cared more about pilots' lives than regulations. A mechanic who saw a problem everyone else ignored. A man who took 6 inches of piano wire and changed the war. McKenna died in 1994. He was 76 years old. His obituary in the Dayton Daily News mentioned his World War II service, but didn't describe what he'd done in New Guinea. Few people at his funeral knew. His children knew he'd been a mechanic in the Pacific. They knew he'd worked on P-38s. They didn't know he'd modified them. He never told them. Hayes flew to Ohio for the funeral. He was 74 years old by then. He stood at the graveside and said a few words about McKenna. He told the story, the cable slack, the piano wire tensioner, the unauthorized modification, the lives saved. McKenna's children heard it for the first time. After the service, McKenna's daughter asked Hayes, "Why didn't he ever tell us?" Hayes said, "Because he didn't think it was a big deal. He saw a problem. He fixed it. That's what mechanics do. But he saved lives. He saved my life, and about 200 others. But he didn't do it for recognition. He did it because it was the right thing to do." She said, "The Air Force should have given him a medal." Hayes said, "They should have, but they didn't. So I'm telling you now, your father was a hero, not the kind they put in newspapers, the kind who works in the shadows and fixes problems and never asks for credit, the best kind. The war was won by thousands of decisions, strategic decisions by generals, tactical decisions by pilots, engineering decisions by designers. But it was also won by decisions like McKenna's. Small decisions, unauthorized decisions, made by people who saw problems and fixed them despite regulations saying they shouldn't. The doctrine said don't turn with zeros. The engineers said the cable tension was within specification. The regulations said field modifications were prohibited. All of that was true, and all of it was incomplete. Hayes learned that lesson on August 17th, 1943. The lesson was simple. Manuals tell you how to fly. Reality tells you how to survive. Doctrine gives you a framework. But winning requires adaptation, innovation, the willingness to break rules when the rules are wrong. McKenna's modification became doctrine eventually, but it started as insubordination. That's how change happens. Someone sees the gap between how things are supposed to work and how they actually work. Someone decides the gap matters more than the regulations. Someone acts. In McKenna's case, that action was 6 inches of piano wire, a Z-shaped tensioner, 43% faster aileron response, the difference between death and survival. The modification spread across the Pacific, then across the world. Thousands of P-38s, thousands of pilots, thousands of combat missions. The modification worked every time. 0 failures. Just faster response, better turning, more victories, more pilots coming home. Hayes came home because of it. So did hundreds of others. They went back to their lives, had families, built careers, grew old. Most never knew why they survived when statistics said they shouldn't. They just knew their P-38s handled better than expected. They knew they could turn with enemy fighters and win. They didn't question it. They just flew. But Hayes questioned it. He knew exactly why he survived. He knew whose hands had modified his aircraft. He knew whose decision had saved his life. And he spent the rest of his life making sure that decision wasn't forgotten. Because wars are won by strategy. Battles are won by tactics. But individual lives are saved by mechanics who care, who see problems others ignore, who act when action is prohibited, who choose survival over regulations. McKenna was that mechanic. Hayes was the pilot who lived because of him. And 200 other pilots were the men who never knew their lives were saved by 6 inches of piano wire installed in violation of every regulation in the Army Air Force Maintenance Manual. That's the story. That's how fighter tactics changed the war. Not through official doctrine, not through engineering breakthroughs, through a sergeant who knew the right answer and acted on it. Even when the system said he was wrong, the system was wrong. McKenna was right. And the proof is in the numbers. 200 pilots who should have died but didn't. 200 men who came home. 200 families who stayed intact. 200 lives saved by a modification that started as insubordination and ended as standard procedure. Hayes understood that. He lived it. And when he died in 1999, his will included a provision. He donated his entire collection of P-38 documentation to the Smithsonian. Combat reports, maintenance logs, McKenna's original calculations, the paper trail, the evidence. Attached to the donation was a letter. Hayes wrote it in 1998, a year before he died. It said, "These documents tell the story of how one man's unauthorized action saved hundreds of lives. History credits generals and strategists with winning wars, but wars are won by sergeants who break rules for the right reasons. Technical Sergeant James McKenna broke rules. He saved my life. He saved many others. He deserves to be remembered. If these documents help someone remember him, then his legacy is secure. The documents are archived now. Researchers can access them. The story exists in official records. McKenna's contribution is documented. Not widely known, but documented. Preserved, true. That's victory. Not just the battles won, not just the war ended, but the memory preserved, the lesson learned, the truth recorded. McKenna fixed aircraft. Hayes flew them. Together, they changed how the Air Force fought. Together, they saved lives. Together, they proved that sometimes the right answer violates regulations. Sometimes survival requires insubordination. Sometimes victory requires mechanics who care more about pilots than paperwork. That's the story of how fighter tactics changed World War II, not through doctrine, through piano wire.